beforehand. The 24 of William Byron peels down to pit road and serves his
750 horsepower, 200 miles per hour, and an engine design so feared, NASCAR literally banned it. This is the story of the Hemi, a legend forged in drag strips, stock car tracks, and American muscle car culture. Today we're counting down the 10 legendary Hemi engines that changed the game forever and why they're still unmatched in automotive history. The Hemi name comes from its hemispherical combustion chamber, a design that actually dates back to fighter planes in World War II. But in America's golden age of horsepower, Chrysler turned this aircraft technology into a street weapon. These engines weren't built for fuel economy or quiet operation. They were built for one thing: domination. Domination in racing, domination in showrooms, and domination in the culture of speed that defined post-war America. From the early 1950s through today's supercharged monsters, each Hemi on our countdown represents a turning point in automotive history. These weren't just engines, they were statements. Statements that said American engineering could build the most powerful, most aggressive motors on the planet. And as we climb this list, you'll discover how each Hemi didn't just move cars faster, it moved the entire industry forward into uncharted territory. Number 10, the first generation firepower Hemi, 1951. It all began in 1951 with the 331 cubic inch firepower Hemi, and this is where the legend was born. Picture post-war America. Gas costs 20 cents a gallon, the interstate highway system is just beginning construction, and suddenly Chrysler drops a V8 engine that looks like it belongs in a fighter plane rather than a family sedan. The hemispherical combustion chambers allowed for larger valves and more efficient breathing than anything Detroit had ever produced. 180 horsepower might not sound like much by today's standards, but in 1951, that was serious muscle car territory before muscle cars even existed as a concept. Most cars of the era were making less than 100 horsepower from their straight six engines or primitive V8s. The Hemi was producing nearly twice the power of its competition, and hot rodders immediately recognized its potential. Here's what made this engine revolutionary. The hemispherical combustion chamber design allowed the valves to be positioned at optimal angles for maximum airflow. Traditional wedge-shaped chambers forced compromises in valve placement, but the Hemi's dome shape meant engineers could position intake and exhaust valves directly opposite each other for perfect breathing. The result was an engine that made more power per cubic inch than anything else available. But here's where the real magic happened. This engine was so overbuilt and so powerful that hot rodders immediately started yanking them out of heavy Chrysler sedans and stuffing them into lightweight dragsters and street rods. The firepower Hemi became the foundation of American hot rod culture, proving that with the right engine, any car could become a rocket ship. And that's exactly where the Hemi legend really takes off, because drag racers had discovered something that would change motorsports forever. Number 9, the 392 Hemi, 1957. By the late 1950s, Chrysler had pushed their Hemi design to 392 cubic inches and 375 horsepower, creating a true monster for its era. Imagine rolling up to a drive-in restaurant in a 1957 Chrysler 300C. Under your hood is the same basic engine architecture that top fuel dragsters are experimenting with at tracks across the country. You're driving a street-legal race car that most people don't even realize exists. The 392 represented the peak of first-generation Hemi development. Quarter-mile domination was the name of the game, and this engine delivered with bulletproof internals and torque that absolutely crushed the competition. The forged steel crankshaft, heavy-duty connecting rods, and massive pistons were built to withstand forces that would destroy lesser engines. This wasn't just a powerful engine, it was an engine built for punishment. But here's what made the 392 special beyond just its power numbers. Chrysler engineers had refined the Hemi design to the point where it was making more power per cubic inch than anything else in Detroit. While other manufacturers were building bigger and bigger engines to make more power, Chrysler was proving that superior design could beat brute force displacement every time. The 392 became the absolute darling of drag racing culture during the late 1950s. Racers discovered that these engines could be modified to produce incredible power levels while maintaining the reliability needed to win races weekend after weekend. The Hemi's superior breathing and robust construction made it the perfect foundation for building race motors that could survive the punishment of drag racing. This was laying the foundation for what would become the ultimate racing Hemi, and what came next would change drag racing forever. Number Number 8, the 426 Race Hemi 1964. They called it the elephant engine because it was massive, heavy, and absolutely unstoppable once it got moving. Picture yourself at Daytona International Speedway in February 1964. The greatest NASCAR drivers in the world are lined up for the Daytona 500, but one car stands out from the rest. Richard Petty's Plymouth rolls out of the garage area with a 426 Hemi under the hood, and you can hear the difference immediately. The exhaust note is deeper, more aggressive, and somehow more purposeful than anything else on the track. The green flag drops, and Petty doesn't just win the race, he annihilates the entire field. He finishes so far ahead of second place that it looks like the other cars are running a different race entirely. Over 425 horsepower, forged internals throughout, and cross-bolted main bearing caps that could handle forces other engines couldn't even imagine. NASCAR officials quickly realized that nobody else stood a chance against the Hemi-equipped cars. But here's where the story gets really interesting. The 426 Race Hemi was so dominant in NASCAR competition that the sanctioning body made an unprecedented decision. They banned the engine outright, ruling that it gave Chrysler teams an unfair advantage over Ford and General Motors competitors. But NASCAR also gave Chrysler an ultimatum. They could bring the Hemi back to competition, but only if they made the engine available to the general public in production cars. This wasn't just about racing politics. The Hemi had proven that superior engineering could dominate motorsports so completely that it forced rule changes. NASCAR had never banned an engine before, and they've never banned one since. The 426 Race Hemi was so good that it literally rewrote the rules of stock car racing, which brings us to the engine that took the Hemi legend from the racetrack to the street and cemented the Hemi myth in American automotive culture forever. Number 7, the Street Hemi, 426 1966 to 1971. In 1966, Chrysler took NASCAR's challenge and unleashed the 426 Hemi to the American public, officially rated at 425 horsepower, but industry insiders knew it was actually producing closer to 470 horsepower at the crankshaft. This was the most powerful engine you could buy from any American manufacturer, and it came with a price tag that reflected its performance. Imagine walking into a Dodge dealership in 1968. For an extra $813, you could order a Charger RT or Super B with a race-bred motor that was virtually identical to what Richard Petty was running in NASCAR. Dual 4-barrel carburetors, 10.25 to 1 compression ratio, and 490 pound-feet of torque that would literally twist the chassis of lighter cars. Insurance companies feared this engine so much that they often refused to write policies for Hemi-equipped cars. But here's what made the Street Hemi truly special. This wasn't a detuned version of the race engine. Chrysler engineers had taken the lessons learned from NASCAR competition and built a street motor that could survive daily driving while still delivering race car performance. The solid lifter camshaft, forged pistons, and heavy-duty valve train were designed to run hard day after day without breaking down. Street racers absolutely worshiped the Hemi because it represented the ultimate expression of American muscle car philosophy: maximum power, minimum compromise, and a sound that announced your intentions from blocks away. Only about 11,000 cars ever left the factory with a Street Hemi under the hood, making them some of the rarest and most valuable muscle cars today. But Chrysler wasn't done with the Hemi story. The engine had to evolve to survive in the modern world of emissions regulations and fuel economy requirements. Number 6, the 426 Hemi in NHRA Top Fuel, 1960s to present. Even after the Street Hemi disappeared from showrooms in 1971, the racing version lived on in drag racing, and it still dominates NHRA Top Fuel competition today. Picture yourself standing next to the starting line at a major drag racing event. The Christmas tree starts its countdown sequence, the green light flashes, and a nitromethane burning Hemi-powered dragster launches from 0 to 330 miles per hour in under 4 seconds. The acceleration is so violent that it literally compresses your chest and makes it difficult to breathe. These modern Top Fuel engines are producing over 11,000 horsepower on 90% nitromethane fuel. The pistons are literally melting and reforming during each run, and the entire engine must be completely rebuilt after every single pass down the quarter mile. The cylinder heads glow red hot from the combustion temperatures, and the exhaust flames extend 6 feet behind the car. But here's the amazing part about Top Fuel Hemi engines. The basic architecture and design principles are virtually identical to the Street Hemi that Chrysler built in 1966. The hemispherical combustion chambers, the valve angles, and the fundamental engineering concepts have remained unchanged for over 60 years. Modern Top Fuel teams have access to computer-aided design, exotic materials, and manufacturing techniques that didn't exist in the 60s, but they're still using the same basic engine layout that Chrysler engineers developed decades ago. The 426 Hemi architecture was so fundamentally sound that it became the backbone of professional drag racing and has remained competitive for 6 decades. No other engine design has demonstrated that kind of longevity in professional motorsports, but the Hemi rebirth on the street was still to come, and it would prove that the legend was far from over. Number 5. The 5.7 Hemi 2003. After a 30-year absence from showrooms, the Hemi name roared back to life in 2003 with the 5.7-liter version. Picture yourself in a Ram pickup truck towing a boat to the lake on a Saturday morning. You're cruising at highway speeds with a 5,000-pound trailer behind you, but when you need to merge into traffic or climb a hill, you stomp the accelerator and suddenly you're embarrassing Camaros and Mustangs at stoplights. 345 cubic inches producing 345 horsepower might not sound revolutionary by modern standards, but this engine proved that the Hemi could evolve for the contemporary automotive world. Variable displacement technology allowed it to run on just 4 cylinders during light load conditions for improved fuel economy, then instantly switch back to all 8 cylinders when power was needed. Over 1 million 5.7 Hemis were built, making it the most successful Hemi engine in Chrysler's history. But this wasn't just marketing nostalgia trading on a famous name. The 5.7 featured genuine hemispherical combustion chambers and the superior breathing characteristics that made the original Hemi engine so effective. Modern computer-aided design allowed engineers to optimize the chamber shape and valve angles even further than the original 60s designs, resulting in an engine that was more powerful and more efficient than its ancestors. The 5.7 Hemi proved that the legendary engine family could adapt to modern emissions regulations, fuel economy requirements, and reliability expectations without losing its essential character. It maintained the aggressive exhaust note, the impressive torque delivery, and the robust construction that had always defined Hemi engines. But Dodge had far crazier plans developing in their engineering departments, and the horsepower wars were about to begin in earnest. Number 4. The 6.1 Hemi 2005 to 2010. The 6.1 was Chrysler's first real modern performance Hemi, powering the reborn Charger SRT-8 and Challenger when muscle cars returned to American showrooms. Picture being transported back to 2008 when the automotive world was rediscovering high performance after years of low-power malaise-era cars. The 6.1 Hemi gave you 425 horsepower right off the showroom floor with 0 to 60 acceleration in 4.7 seconds and quarter-mile times in the low 13-second range. This was modern muscle car performance reborn with contemporary reliability and refinement. The 6.1 featured aluminum cylinder heads, variable valve timing, and sophisticated engine management systems that would have been science fiction to the engineers who designed the original street Hemi, but it maintained the essential Hemi characteristics that enthusiasts demanded, including that unmistakable exhaust sound and the linear power delivery that made Hemi engines so addictive to drive. The 6.1 proved that there was still a market for high-performance American engines in an era when many manufacturers were focused primarily on fuel economy and emissions compliance. Dodge took a calculated risk that performance enthusiasts would pay premium prices for genuine Hemi power, and they were absolutely right. The 6.1 equipped cars became instant classics and established the foundation for even more extreme performance versions that were already in development. But as impressive as the 6.1 was, it was really just the appetizer for the horsepower wars that were about to explode across the American automotive landscape. What came next would shatter the 700 horsepower barrier and redefine what was possible from a factory production engine. Number 3. The 6.2 Hellcat Hemi 2015 to 2023. 707 horsepower from the factory with a full warranty. The Hellcat Hemi didn't just change the game, it completely rewrote the rules of what American manufacturers were willing to build and sell to the public. Imagine sitting in a Charger or Challenger Hellcat punching the throttle at 60 miles per hour and instantly lighting up the rear tires in a cloud of smoke that would make a top-fueled dragster jealous. This wasn't just a powerful car, it was a factory-built burnout machine that could break traction at virtually any speed. Supercharged and producing 650 pound-feet of torque, the Hellcat Hemi was capable of propelling a 4,000-pound sedan to a top speed of 199 miles per hour. The supercharger whine became as iconic as the exhaust note, creating a soundtrack that announced your arrival from miles away. This was automotive excess at its absolute finest, proving that there was still room for completely unreasonable horsepower in the modern automotive world. But the Hellcat represented more than just impressive dyno numbers. It forced General Motors and Ford to respond with their own high horsepower offerings, reigniting the muscle car wars that had been dormant since the early 70s. Suddenly, every American manufacturer was trying to build the most powerful engine possible, leading to an arms race that produced some of the most incredible performance cars in automotive history. The Hellcat Hemi proved that modern manufacturing techniques and materials could produce reliability levels that would have been impossible in the original muscle car era. 700 horsepower engines that could be driven daily, started reliably in any weather, and serviced at regular dealerships represented a level of sophistication that the original Hemi engineers could never have imagined. But Dodge wasn't finished pushing the boundaries of what a street-legal Hemi could accomplish. Number 2, the Demon Hemi, 2018. 840 horsepower on pump gasoline. The Dodge Demon wasn't just a car, it was an NHRA certified drag racing weapon that you could drive to the track, run 9 second quarter miles, then drive home for dinner. Picture yourself at a drag strip launching a completely stock car and hitting a record-setting 9.65 seconds in the quarter mile. The Demon was the first factory production car to achieve a sub 10 second quarter mile time, and it did it while being completely street legal. This was the ultimate expression of everything Chrysler had learned about building Hemi engines over 7 decades of development. The Demon featured a trans brake, skinny front drag tires from the factory, launch control systems, and the option to run racing fuel for even more power. It wasn't just fast in a straight line, it was specifically engineered to dominate drag strips while still being civilized enough for street driving. The Demon proved what a modern street-legal Hemi could really accomplish when engineers were given unlimited creative freedom. It was the first production car to lift its front wheels off the ground during acceleration, earning it a ban from many drag strips for being too fast to run without safety equipment. This was American automotive engineering at its most extreme, pushing the boundaries of physics and common sense in equal measure. But even the Demon, as incredible as it was, couldn't claim the title of greatest Hemi engine of all time. That honor belongs to an engine that created the entire mythos and established the reputation that every subsequent Hemi has traded on. Number 1, the 426 Hemi Legacy Champion. The king of all Hemis. Not the fastest anymore, not the most technologically advanced, but absolutely the most legendary engine in American automotive history. The 426 Hemi created the mythos that every subsequent Hemi engine has built upon. From Richard Petty's Daytona 500 domination in 1964 to top fuel dragsters still running variations of this design today, the 426 represents everything that made American muscle cars special. Picture the cultural impact of this single engine design. It dominated NASCAR so completely that the sanctioning body had to change the rules. It powered the most iconic muscle cars of the golden era. It became the foundation of professional drag racing and remained competitive for 60 years. It influenced an entire generation of automotive enthusiasts and established performance benchmarks that manufacturers still reference today. The 426 Hemi only lived in production cars for 5 years, from 1966 to 1971, but its DNA still powers racing engines 6 decades later. The fundamental design principles, the hemispherical combustion chambers, and the engineering philosophy continue to influence modern performance engines across the industry. No other single engine design has had such a lasting impact on automotive culture. This wasn't just an engine, it was America's loudest and most powerful cultural export. The Hemi became synonymous with American automotive excellence, representing everything that made Detroit the performance capital of the world during the muscle car era. The Hemi changed the way we think about cars and performance. From post-war power to modern muscle, it defined entire generations of automotive enthusiasts. Federal regulations, safety requirements, emission standards, nothing could silence the Hemi legend. These weren't just engines, they were legends carved in steel and forged in the fires of American automotive ambition. And next time, we dive into the most fastest muscle cars ever sold to the public, including one that killed more drivers than all the others combined. Subscribe because the road only gets wilder from here.